The Alpha King saw his rejected mate dancing with another. His wolf snapped in front of everyone. Welcome to the story, King, where every tale holds a crown of emotion. The champagne glass in Alpha King Damien's hand shattered. No one heard it over the thundering music of the lunar ball, but every wolf in the grand ballroom felt the ripple of his fury. A wave of raw, primal dominance crashed through the room like an invisible tsunami, making knees buckle and heads bow instinctively. The orchestra's instruments squealed to a discordant halt. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward the dais where the most powerful alpha in the northern hemisphere stood frozen, his silver gaze locked onto someone, in the center of the dance floor. And there she was, Syrah, his rejected mate, dancing, smiling, in another man's arms. 3 months earlier, Damien had thought he was doing the right thing. I, Alpha King Damien Ashford, reject you, Syrah Winters, as my mate and future Lunar Queen. The words had tasted like poison even as he spoke them. Syrah had stood before him in his private study, her emerald eyes wide with shock, then swimming with tears she refused to let fall. She'd worn that simple blue dress he secretly loved, the one that matched the wildflowers that grew near the southern border of his territory. Why? Her voice had been barely a whisper. Because you're too gentle for this world, he'd wanted to say. Because the enemies circling my throne would tear you apart to get to me. Because I've seen what happens to lunar queens. I watched my own mother destroyed by the politics and bloodshed. Because I can't bear the thought of your light being extinguished by the darkness that surrounds me. Instead, he'd said, you're not strong enough to be Lunar Queen. He'd watched something die in her eyes. Something precious and irreplaceable. She'd lifted her chin with a dignity that made his wolf howl in protest. I, Syrah Winters, accept your rejection. The bond had snapped like a tether cut by a blade. The pain had brought him to his knees after she left, his wolf clawing at his insides, rage and grief warring for dominance. But he told himself it was for the best. She would be safe. She would find happiness elsewhere, away from the target painted on his back. He'd been so sure he could live with the emptiness. He'd been wrong. The present. Your Majesty, you're bleeding. Beta Marcus appeared at Damien's elbow, his expression carefully neutral despite the Alpha King's claws having extended, digging into his own palms. Damien didn't respond. Couldn't. His entire being was focused on the scene before him. Syrah wore a gown of midnight blue that seemed woven from starlight itself. It clung to curves he'd only dreamed of touching, then flowed like water with every movement. Her raven hair was swept up, revealing the graceful column of her neck, the neck his wolf had wanted to mark, to claim, to protect. She was radiant. She was beautiful. She was dancing with Alpha Kieran of the Western Pack. Kieran, wealthy, charming, with a reputation for collecting beautiful things. His hand rested possessively on Syrah's waist. He was whispering something in her ear, making her laugh, and that sound, that crystalline laugh Damien had thought he'd never hear again, sent a fresh wave of rage coursing through his veins. Damien, Marcus's warning came too late. The Alpha King was already moving. The crowd parted before him like the Red Sea, wolves pressing themselves against walls and pillars, heads bowed in submission to the apex predator stalking through their midst. Damien's wolf was too close to the surface now, his eyes flickering between silver and molten gold, his aura pressing down on everyone in the room like a physical weight. Everyone except Syrah. She'd stopped dancing, her hand dropping from Kieran's shoulder. But she didn't bow, didn't look away. She met Damien's approach with her spine straight and her chin raised, those emerald eyes showing no fear. Only ice, Your Majesty. Kieran's voice was steady, but Damien could smell the subtle scent of nervousness beneath his cologne. What an honor. Get your hands off her. Damien's voice was barely recognizable, doubled with his wolf's growl. Now. Kieran's smile was practiced, diplomatic. Alpha King, I meant no disrespect. The lady agreed too. I said, now. Each word dropped like a stone into silence. Kieran's hands fell away from Syrah. He took a careful step back, but his eyes flashed with challenge, a younger alpha's pride stung by public humiliation. With all due respect, Your Majesty, Syrah is not your mate. You made that abundantly clear 3 months ago. The reminder was a match to gasoline. Damien's roar shook the crystal chandeliers. His shift began without conscious thought, bones cracking, muscles rippling, his wolf surging forward to claim what was his. Someone screamed. The crowd scattered. In seconds, the Northern Hemisphere's Alpha King would lose control in front of the entire supernatural elite, consequences be damned. Then a small hand touched his chest. Damien, stop. Syrah's voice cut through the haze of fury like moonlight through storm clouds. Her hand was warm against his partially shifted chest, right over his frantically beating heart. The touch sent electricity racing along nerves he'd thought numbed, reigniting feelings he'd tried to bury. His wolf, poised to rampage, went utterly still. Look at me, Syrah commanded softly. Damien's eyes, now fully wolf gold, locked onto hers. This close, he could see the faint smattering of freckles across her nose, the subtle silver flecks in her green irises, the way her pulse fluttered at her throat. He could smell her scent, wildflowers and rain and something uniquely Syrah asterisk, and beneath it, the faint, devastating absence of the broken bond. You don't get to do this, she said, her voice quiet but firm. You rejected me. You told me I wasn't enough. You don't get to crash back into my life because you don't like seeing me happy. Happy. The word came out strangled. His hand, still tipped with claws, came up to hover near her face, not quite touching. With him, what I do and who I do it with is none of your concern anymore, Your Majesty. The formal title from her lips was like a knife between his ribs. Syrah, his voice broke. Around them, the ballroom had emptied to a safe distance, giving the appearance of privacy while hundreds watched from the shadows. Damien didn't care. Please. Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, maybe, or memory. Please what, Damien? Please forgive you. Please forget how you looked at me like I was an inconvenient problem to solve. Her hand fell away from his chest, and he felt the loss like a physical wound. Please wait around while you figure out if I'm worth keeping this time. That's not. He forced his wolf back, forced his body to shift back to human form, though every instinct screamed to claim her, mark her, make sure every male in 100-mile radius knew she was his. I was trying to protect you. By breaking my heart. Tears shimmered in her eyes now, but her voice remained steady. By making me feel worthless. You could never be worthless. The words tore from him. You're everything, Syrah. You're not enough to fight for, apparently. The accusation hung between them like a blade. Damien's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Around them, he could feel the weight of hundreds of stares, hear the whispered speculation that would be all over the supernatural world by morning. Alpha King Damien Ashford, who'd never shown weakness, who'd ruled with ice and iron, brought to his knees by the mate he'd rejected. He should walk away, salvage what dignity remained, prove he'd made the right choice 3 months ago. Instead, he dropped to one knee before her. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. You're right, Damien said, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. I was a coward. I convinced myself I was being noble, protecting you from the dangers of my world, but the truth is I was protecting myself. I was terrified, Syrah. Terrified that if I let myself love you, really love you, I'd lose you the way my father lost my mother. The way I've lost everyone I've ever cared about. Syrah's breath hitched. But losing you to my own fear was worse than any enemy could have inflicted. He looked up at her, letting her see everything, all the loneliness, all the regret, all the desperate, howling emptiness that had consumed him since the rejection. I was wrong about everything. You are strong enough, stronger than me, strong enough to walk away with your head high, strong enough to survive what I did to you, strong enough to move on when I couldn't. Damien, I'm not asking you to forgive me, he continued. I'm not even asking for another chance, though my wolf would tear this building apart for one. I just need you to know that rejecting you was the biggest mistake of my life. And seeing you tonight, seeing you smiling and dancing and living." His voice roughened. "It made me realize that all I want is for you to be happy. Even if that happiness isn't with me." Silence blanketed the ballroom like snow. Sarah stared down at him, emotions warring across her beautiful face. Damien held his breath, his wolf pacing anxiously, waiting for her verdict. "You hurt me," she finally whispered. "When you rejected me, I thought I'd die from the pain of it." He flinched but didn't look away. "But I didn't die. I survived. I became stronger." She took a shaky breath. "You were right about one thing. I wasn't ready to be Lunar Queen. Not because I was weak, but because I didn't know my own strength. These 3 months, I've discovered who I am without you. I've built a life, made friends, found my purpose." Each word was a nail in his coffin, but Damien forced himself to listen. "So no, Damien, I'm not just going to fall back into your arms because you finally figured out what you threw away." His heart shattered all over again. He started to rise, to give her the space she deserved. Her hand caught his chin, tilting his face up to meet her gaze. "But," she continued, and he saw the glimmer of something in her eyes, something that looked dangerously like hope. "If you're willing to prove to me that I'm worth fighting for, worth choosing every single day, worth standing beside as an equal." She paused, and the smallest smile curved her lips. "Then maybe, eventually, we could try again. Slowly, carefully, with no guarantees." Damien's heart stuttered. "Sarah, I'm not promising anything," she warned. "You broke my trust. Earning it back will take time. And effort. And you'll have to grovel. A lot. I'll grovel every day for the rest of my life if that's what it takes." He caught her hand, pressing it to his chest where his heart raced. "I'll prove to you that you're my everything, Sarah. My mate, my equal, my queen. Not because our wolves say so, but because I choose you." Every moment, every breath, around them, the ballroom had gone completely silent, every supernatural creature straining to hear the Alpha King's declaration. Sarah's eyes searched his for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled, a real smile that lit up her entire face and made his wolf sing. "Then I suppose you should start now," she said softly. "May I have this dance, Alpha King?" Relief crashed through him so forcefully he nearly swayed. "It would be my honor, Miss Winters." As he stood and drew her into his arms, as the orchestra began to play once more, Damien knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Sarah wouldn't make it simple. She'd test him, challenge him, make him work for every smile, every touch, every piece of her trust. And he'd treasure every single moment of it, because this time, he was fighting for what mattered most. As they moved across the dance floor, her body fitting perfectly against his despite the broken bond, Damien whispered in her ear, "I love you, Sarah. I should have said it 3 months ago. I should have said it every day. I'm saying it now, and I'll never stop saying it." She tilted her head back to look at him, tears and laughter mingling in her eyes. "Then show me, Damien. Show me that the Alpha King can be the man I once thought I saw in him." "I will," he vowed. "On my life, on my crown, on everything I am, I will." And somewhere in the depths of his soul, where the bond had once been, Damien felt the faintest spark. Not the mate bond, that would take time to rebuild, if Sarah chose to accept him again. But something else, something precious, hope. Thank you for reading with the Story King, where every ending is just a new beginning. Subscribe for more tales of love, power, and destiny.